our last video on Baldur's Gate lore, we discussed the connection that the Dead 3 might have to Baldur's Gate 3. In the comments, many people talked about things they noticed in the game that make this connection more likely. Since you guys seem to enjoy that video, we're going to talk more about the Descent into Avernus adventure released by Wizards of the Coast. Since that adventure starts in Baldur's Gate and deals with Elturel, many people are considering it a prequel to Baldur's Gate 3. As a warning, this video contains potential spoilers for Baldur's Gate 3, as well as definite spoilers for Critical Role Campaign 1 and the Descent into Avernus Dungeons and Dragons adventure. The introductory adventure in Descent into Avernus has the players in Baldur's Gate. Elturel is a nearby city that served as the capital of the region. Elturel vanished from the map exactly 10 days before the beginning of the story. Grand Duke Ravengard, also known as the Mayor of Baldur's Gate and the Commander-in-Chief of the Flaming Fist, traveled to Elturel right before it vanished. Ravengard was in charge of the mercenary-like police force known as the Flaming Fist. Therefore, the neighboring city and the leader of Baldur's Gate have both been eliminated. The actual gates of Baldur's Gate have been closed to incoming and outgoing traffic because the Flaming Fist is preoccupied with resolving a significant refugee crisis due to Elturel's disappearance, which requires the majority of their available manpower. The players have been dragged away from the streets and forced into service by the Flaming Fist so that they can deal with another issue. Strange members of a cult are rampaging through the city committing senseless and arbitrary crimes. The party has just become the newest members of the Flaming Fist, and they have been given the mission to investigate what is going on with these cultists and put an end to it. Depending on how the players respond to this drafting, they may be willing or unwilling participants. They make the discovery that a noble family known as the Vanthampurs is providing financial support to the cultists who worship the Dead 3 gods, Bane, Baal, and Merkel, with wealth that once belonged to Tiamat's church. This wealth was acquired due to the events of another D&D adventure, The Rise of Tiamat, in which the evil dragon goddess Tiamat was severely weakened. It is for the purpose of sowing disorder throughout the city that the Vanthampurs are providing financial support to the Dead 3. They intend to demonstrate that the Flaming Fist are ineffective and convince them to quit the fight. After that, they will seize control of Baldur's Gate, destroy the city so that it vanishes as Elturel did, and receive a significant amount of power in return. The High Overseer Thavius Krieg, who served in a role analogous to that of Elturel's mayor, struck a bargain with the fallen celestial Zariel many years ago, which ultimately led to Elturel's downfall. In exchange for Zariel's assistance in destroying a massive horde of undead and vampires that had taken control of the city, Thavius had promised to hand over the city and the souls of its inhabitants to Zariel after a certain number of years, and now that time had come. Hell in the Forgotten Realms setting is made of 9 layers, and Avernus is the top layer. Zariel is a fallen celestial that forcibly gained control as Lord of Avernus by ousting the previous leader Bel. Elturel's disappearance was a result of Zariel cashing in on her contract with Thavius and pulling Elturel down into Avernus. After the players have finished their investigation, the Vanthampur family is almost certainly dead, imprisoned, or both. Additionally, they have the contract that Thavius Krieg made, despite the fact that they almost certainly killed him as well. If the events play out as the adventure expects, the players will be motivated to try to discover what happened to Elturel. When the players are teleported to Elturel, they see it is suspended above Avernus, but is being gradually lowered into it by great chains. Devils and demons are engaged in a massive conflict to claim the city as their own. The majority of the city has been leveled, and the players are tasked with assisting the few remaining inhabitants, including Duke Ravengard of Baldur's Gate, in establishing a foothold. During this process, they also gain knowledge of a potential way to save what is left of Elturel, despite the fact that they do not have complete information regarding the reasons behind this. The players know that finding the Sword of Zariel will help them save Elturel. They spend some time there helping the people and collecting some helpful items. It turns out that Zariel harbors a deep grudge against Elturel. A few hundred years ago, when Zariel was still a good celestial, she had the notion that the angels could end the Blood War by storming through hell. The Blood War was the name given to the war between the devils and the demons. Zariel did not want to remain neutral while the majority of angels and celestials chose to avoid getting involved in the conflict. She traveled to Elturel, formed a group of soldiers with characteristics similar to those of paladins and called them Hellriders. Zariel then led the charge against the devils and demons. As a last-ditch effort, Zariel and the Hellriders rode through the portal to Avernus, where they came very close to winning the battle against the devils. Despite this, a significant significant number of the Hellriders were overwhelmed with the horrors of hell and fled. They lied and claimed that they fought valiantly, but in reality, they ran away not long after they arrived in Avernus and closed the portal behind them. The majority of people are unaware of this betrayal, and they hold a high regard for the Hellriders. It is an order that continues to operate in the modern day, despite the fact that the majority of mortals have long since forgotten the truth about their deception. Zariel was taken captive and forced to serve Asmodeus as a result of the survivors' cowardice, which resulted in the deaths of the valiant Hellriders who had remained in Avernus. Zariel hates Elturel because the disloyal Hellriders have hundreds of years of roots there, with their descendants and the Order itself still playing a major role in the city. The Baldur's Gate 3 gloves, Hellrider's Pride, are meant to be a reference to the Hellriders of Elturel. After Elturel, the players enter a bit of a sandbox experience in Avernus. They know they need to find Zariel's sword and are likely to face Zariel herself. There are also other items that might help them in their journey. The players can learn where to find the sword in a variety of ways. One way is via Bel, the former ruler of Avernus, who would love to both get rid of the sword and Zariel so he can rule once again. Another is via Olanthius, one of Zariel's most loyal Hellriders. When Olanthius learned of Zariel's fall, he took his own life but was forced back into service when Zariel raised him as a Death Knight. Some characters would like to see Zariel redeemed, and others want to see her killed. The players learn that Zariel's sword is in a place called the Scab, where the evil terrain of Avernus has formed up around the good sword like a wound. In these adventures, you also get to deal with the weakened Church of Tiamat. Tiamat has been imprisoned in Avernus. Arkhan, the Oathbreaker paladin played by Joe Manganiello in Critical Role's Campaign 1 finale, also traveled here after the events of that episode. Players can also talk to him and possibly gain his favor when they tell him about the Cult of the Dead 3 stealing Tiamat's hoard of wealth. Once the players learn where the sword is hidden, they travel to the Scab to retrieve it. The players learn that this sword has the potential to save Zariel if they use it correctly. Players have lots of choices here and may either seek to redeem Zariel or kill her based on their interactions with characters like Bel and Olanthius earlier. Zariel has lots of enemies. Baphomet is a demon that would love to take over Avernus. Arkhan would love to take out Zariel and free Tiamat from her chain. Bel would love to rule Avernus again. The players can also go it alone and try to kill her without compromising with any of the other parties involved. There are multiple possible endings to the adventure. The players can fight Zariel with Tiamat's dragons or with Bel, and install one of them as the new ruler of Avernus. They can kill Zariel, or they can attempt to remind her of her celestial purpose and redeem her. They could see Elturel fall into the river Styx or restored to the surface. The developers of Baldur's Gate 3 have been clear that the game is not about Elturel, but that the events of Descent into Avernus may have an impact on the game. For one, you encounter refugees from Elturel in the game. There is also the link between Bal and the Baldur's Gate series in general, and the fact that the Cult of the Dead 3 plays such a big role in the initial events of Avernus. Baldur's Gate 3 gives us hints about the canon ending of Avernus. Elturel has been restored to the surface. The question is, will we encounter any other characters from Avernus in Baldur's Gate 3? Could we encounter Zariel? Could the events of the adventure have led to the Mind Flayer's involvement in Baldur's Gate 3's story somehow? What do you think? Let us know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. For more lore about everything, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment for what lore topic you want us to cover next. See you in the next video.